Hi, you right? So yesterday we looked at part one of A Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, a pretty cool little short story that we're going to use as a lead into half term. So, without further ado, you're distraction free. Do you have a pen? Do you have some paper? Pause the video and get them now if you don't. Bit of mastery review first of all. So pause the video now and answer those questions. Good luck. Alright, so answers to the questions are: number one, what F means incapable of producing a useful result pointless? The answer is futile. Number two, what does dehumanizing mean? To rid somebody of their human qualities. Number three, what does a bird symbolize? Freedom, joy, adventure, hope, etc. A huge array of connotations or symbolic importance that a bird suggests. Number four, which war did the poet Wilfred Owen write about? Brilliant poet. World War One. Okay, so after half term, we'll be looking at a new topic: explorations in evil and eccentricity. Look at the placement, perfect. This week we'll explore a short story to whet our appetites by Edgar Allan Poe. So, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Just a reminder, madness is used historically and today to reflect a state of wild or chaotic activity. Okay, so often wild or chaotic behavior has been often associated with madness for a whole host of different reasons. Okay, so word that's relevant for today, please. What I'd like you to do is like you to pause the video, write down the word and the definition of the word and the ways you can use that word class in the example sentence. Okay, pause the video now and write it all down. Okay, so the word is pronounced sagacity. It's kind of a synonym of the word wisdom, really. Ability to make good judgments, foresight, or keen perception. You could turn it into an adjective by saying sagacious. You could turn it into an adverb by saying sagaciously. A good example of how to use it: the coach's sagacity enabled the team to win the cup. A thing to note: by good judgments, it doesn't always mean moral judgments. Good moral judgments itself, or morally good judgments rather, okay? So, yesterday we read part one, which is all there. If you want to, you can pause the video now and reread that just to remind yourself as to what happened. Now I'm going to read you part two. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon a tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief, oh no, it was the low stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. When he had turned in the bed, his fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney, it is only the mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket that has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily. until at length a simple dim ray like the thread of the spider shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. Okay, so that's into part 2. So, bear that in mind. You can pause the video and go back between these slides if you need to, and I've attached a copy of part 1 and 2 to the Show My Homework as well. Okay, so quickfire comprehension. Answer these questions in your book/notes, please. Okay, pause the video here and have a go at writing those answers down. Okay, so why does the narrator feel as he has acted with sagacity at the beginning of part 2? Answer, because the old man woke up and the narrator feels pleased that he wasn't caught because of his good judgment in acting cautiously. So he's pleased he hasn't been caught. He feels he's acted well to not be caught. How long had the narrator been keeping quite still before he had the second noise, which was the low groan of the old man? 1 hour, or just a bit more, I suppose. What emotion does the textual detail, because death in approaching him had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim, suggest? Fear, or the fear of dying? What is different when the narrator opens the lantern on this particular night? The old man's vulture eye is open. And then finally, what noise does the narrator hear at the end of part 2? The old man's beating heart. Okay, so things are building up. You feel like the tension is increasing. We're getting towards some grand event. Okay, but what I want you to think about is this particular bit, exploring figurative language, similes, metaphors, personification, that kind of shenanigans. Okay, this textual detail from the text. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray like the thread of the spider shot out from the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. The question I want to consider today is, what does the writer use the simile and metaphor in this textual detail to convey? So in this bit here, okay, there is one simile, a comparison using like or as, and one metaphor, comparing something to something else. What I'd like you to do in your notes is write down the metaphor and the simile, so the words from the text here, and then label them. Label the metaphor, label the simile. After that, write a note next to it. What is the simile describing? And after that, what is the metaphor describing? Okay, pause the video here and have a go. Okay, so, okay, the simile, simple dim ray like the thread of the spider. Okay, that's the simile. You can see the comparison using the word like here. And it's describing the act of the ray of light emanating from the lantern held by the narrator. The second one is vulture eye. It's a metaphor, and it's describing the old man's eye. Okay, describing it to be like a vulture. So let's think about those two animals or creatures in a little bit more detail. So the vulture. Connotations. A word suggests or evokes. It's usually abstract nouns, words associated with thoughts or feelings, okay, that we use to describe the connotations of things. And animals have quite strong connotations. Vultures are scavengers who feed on carrion, dead animals, dead flesh. Because of this, they often carry connotations of death, imminent death, or approaching death, okay, amongst other things as well. Spiders are arachnids who ensnare their prey in their webs. Because of this, they often carry connotations of patience, power, poison, and evil. Okay, so what we're going to do now is think about the connotations. Why then describe the old man's eye as a vulture eye? Why then describe the ray of light from the lantern that the narrator is holding as looking like the thread of the spider? Okay, and we're going to answer our big question. What does the writer use a simile and metaphor in his textual detail to convey? I'm going to show you my example. Then I'd like you to use these sentence stems and write your own one about the metaphor, the vulture eye. Okay, so my turn. The writer uses the simile ray like the thread of a spider to describe the ray of light. The use of spider is interesting because it carries connotations of power and evil, which could suggest the malicious power the narrator who is holding the lamp has over the old man. So I've explained a method the writer's using, I've used a textual detail to support it, and I've summarised what it shows. Then I've considered in a bit of detail the connotations of a key word within that quote itself. What I'd like you to do here is do something similar, but not for mine, but for that bit that's describing the old man's eye, the vulture eye. Okay, pause the video here and have a go at answering that question using those sentence stems there. Okay, so we now come to the end of part 2. So predictions, like we did last time. We're reading the story in 3 parts. We have only 1 part to go, and this is how part 2 is ended. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. So, I want you to write a sentence, please. How will the story develop and end? I mean, I know the obvious answer to that question, because at the start he talks about a murder, yeah. But is anything else going to happen? Okay. Good luck, guys. Look forward to reading your answers.